Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to Plain Talk Tuesday's edition. Tonight we were supposed to have a PNM, former MP and minister. We had to switch the weekly schedule around to accommodate a change. And tonight we moved our Thursday guest to tonight, and he was amenable to the idea. Former Lieutenant Commander, former Commander of the National Operations Center, a man who needs very little introduction, Commander Gavin Hero. Good evening, Commander.
Good evening, Philip, and good evening to our audience who's joining us live, those who are streaming and listening, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but as I found out, internationally also.
I know that you like to start these shows with your little disclaimer, and I don't give you wrong, so go ahead.
Well, not so much a disclaimer, but as an awareness to all who are listening and to our esteemed host, that there are some things that I have always told you, Mr. Alexander, that I do not agree with. Not in what is being said, but how it is being said. And I know that you are delivering to an audience in demand, and for that I have all the respect for you. And I have granted this interview this evening based on our relationship and the fact that we are about the red, white, and black. So I may disagree with many things that you say, but tonight's interview is about public awareness and getting information across so that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago can be more aware of a way forward. And I like the fact that you have instituted that it's not about change, it's about transformation.
Gavin, I want to tell you, Trinidadians walk around with the idea that what we need is a Barack Obama, but I know that you know that what we need first is a Lee Kuan Yew. And Trinidad needs a massive cleanup of a lot of the criminality. Last night I had attorney at law, former attorney at law, a jurist with 55 years experience, Vernon de Lima, one of the best known criminal lawyers in this part of the world. And some of the information that he gave the listeners last night shocked people and rocked people to the core just how rotten things are in Denmark. And I want to tell you something, and I want to say this. I have people that I speak with on a daily and an hourly basis, people like Gary Aboud and Richard Blaze. They are like the two angels that sit on my shoulders, Gary Aboud and Richard Blaze. Because sometimes I know I can sound harsh, but you were at one point commander in an armed force that could have been pressed into service in war. And while I know that you have a very amenable personality, and that even if you've had to draw your sword in anger, the recipient might have been understanding to the very end because of your tone and your demeanor, and I get that. But we wear different hats, sir. And I have nothing but respect for you. I want to tell you something. You, like every other guest, and I compare you to my brother Paul, who will come on this show, but he wouldn't go on any other show anywhere in the world. He is an epidemiologist in the front line of COVID-19. He's been on the front line of SARS and MERS, and this is what he does. And he comes on the show because he knows that I know that there are things that I cannot ask him and there are things that he cannot answer. And I am aware for years talking to you, similarly, that you would tell me stuff. I just made that joke with Satish Ramsaran off air, that you would tell me things and then tell me, but you can't talk about it. So, and I am aware of that. And if I ask you any questions that you ought not to, because of any confidentiality in the work that you do, you can feel free to say, I cannot answer that. Okay? But the purpose of Plain Talk, this series of shows, is to bring brilliant minds, capable people to Trinidadians so that they see that outside of the politics of old talk, that there are people who can, if given the opportunity, fix this broken country. And I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Sure. Yeah? Not a problem, I appreciate it.
You were the commander of the National Operations Center. Prior to that, you were an advisor to the Ministry of National Security. Before that, you were a lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard. So you have a rich history in national security. It would be fair to say that all of your career is pretty much national security and law enforcement, yes?
Correct. A lot of years in the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the Coast Guard, and then I would have worked with the Ministry of National Security and also the head of certain agencies in the Ministry of National Security, some of them very classified. I do have a lot of experience in law enforcement, starting off with the Special Anti-Crime Unit in Trinidad and Tobago, and then branching off to work directly with law enforcement. Although I was military, a lot of my career, the latter half of my career was military by rank, law enforcement by operations.
Saying that you are amenable in personality, and then you being able to say that you were part of the Special Anti-Crime Unit of Trinidad and Tobago, which was under the Patrick Manning government, and then segue into the head of the National Operations Center under the Kamla Prasad Bisesa government, shows that you are apolitical, for want of a better word, where you are concerned, yeah?
Yeah, and sometimes you allow your operations, you allow your experiences and people's relationship to speak for itself rather than you seeing it or someone else. So anybody who was aware or acquainted with the operational aspect of my career could attest to the statement that you just made.
But, and I want to say this again, it is important to say and to note, because very few people segue between the political sides. I don't even know how else to name them. I don't think there's very much difference in their ideologies or their philosophies. But you, like a fish in the sea, that spend your whole life in salt, if you have to cook the fish, you have to add salt. You don't seem to be impregnated by anything that affects either of the parties. You are still just focused on your job, which is a law enforcement professional.
Yes, as well, it comes down to something that we share in my fraternity, which is we are all about the red, white, and black.
Indeed. Indeed. And that takes us to where we start tonight. So a lot of this was a lead in. I want to ask you, there was a massive drug bust that took place recently. Can I ask you questions on that?
Yeah, we can speak about it. It was all over the open source and over the. Are you guys picking me up? Because I got an interruption there with my reception. Are you seeing me?
Hearing you and seeing you perfectly, so everything is under control on our end. You okay now?
Yeah, I'm good. Just want to make sure.
The presence of the United States Navy and military in our area, is that what's driving the sudden upsurge in interdiction at sea?
I am unable to say, especially when it relates, if we can, for instance, if we can say it is because of the U.S. presence, in our waters that is showing this this new wave of interdiction. What I do know is that over the years, we have continued to have a very good relationship with our US, our UK, our European counterparts, especially in counter narcotics. We would have all been privy to various declarations by Washington, by the White House recently, of the that new surge of the US counter narcotics operation in Latin America and the Caribbean. So even before we were involved in any interdictions outside there, the US would have already been involved in information gathering, in intelligence gathering, with surveillance, and also with the deployment of heavy artillery, both maritime, aviation, and geospatial, using satellites and that type of stuff. But it also is evident that the involvement of the US, or the involvement of allies of the US, which also incorporates Trinidad and Tobago, would have enhanced the intelligence sharing and could have been contributory towards our seizures that we recently saw. I don't have the empirical evidence before me, but for someone who have been used to operations, especially outside there and coordinating maritime ops, it is evident that we are also involved in some intelligence sharing, with whom I am unable to say at this point. But clearly, intelligence sharing involving other counterparts is part of the whole operational aspect, as the operations are being theatered and executed by Trinidad and Tobago, and executed quite well, commendably, to the Coast Guard recently with those two interdictions.
My brief experience with ministry, with national security, I can say without fear of contradiction that our national security arms are extremely capable and competent. I can say that, and I know that for a fact. And I believe that if they were allowed to properly utilize their training and their what they stand for in their roles, their individual and collective roles, that Trinidad and Tobago would not have a lot of the problems that we have now.
Let me say something. I've heard you speak, and I was privy to some of your presentations, and you've continued to speak about the maritime wall, and it is very, very evident that some people need to know that what you're saying, and if I may just add my little two piece to it, it is not really what people think it is, which is really an aspect of patrolling and controlling your maritime space. What the maritime wall really is a maritime domain awareness. It is having maritime domain awareness. It is having command and control in your maritime space. And with that comes a coordinated effort of all of our resources, working with the intelligence and working in relation to clearly defined aims and objectives and goals over a period. It is part of the military aspect of leadership that is known as project governance, in that you identify certain goals, you identify certain targets, and you deploy your resources with the financial support, the human resource support, and the political will to drive operations. This is a maritime wall, and people need to understand it. Don't let Philippa just talking off the head of his head. I know you do your research, and I know your international team is involved with a lot of geopolitical analyses and sharing information, both from open source and confidential sources. So I just wanted Trinidad people to know that when they hear you speak of a maritime wall, what I've just explained is exactly what you're trying to see. It's maritime domain awareness, and it involves the incorporation of the political will, the directives of strategy, and the execution of operationality.
Interviewing somebody like you is the easiest thing in the world in a conversation like this. It hardly gets to be a debate. I don't get to stretch my mind. You say things, I'm ready to interrupt you and say control, you use the word control. You're speaking and I'm ready to interrupt you and say and political will, and while I'm mouthing it, you're saying political will. So it is clear, beyond the shadow of a doubt, you understand this thing better than most. You were responsible for NSOC and then NOC, yes?
Correct.
And both of those platforms were based on the amalgamation of all arms of law enforcement and civil protection agencies to protect, to model, to anticipate, to create an environment where Trinidadians and Tobagonians were safeguarded from threats they didn't even know existed. Yeah?
Correct.
And the maritime security wall would require being able to bridge all the different arms of law enforcement and all the different disciplines and the support systems required to operate something like that. And that was something that you had your hand on, and under Minister of National Security Gary Griffith, I know that it was a focus for a while and the conversation was at the forefront. Why wasn't it ever done?
Well, it probably takes us right back up to the top of the triangle, involving political will or lack of political will. But what also is, sometimes we are creatures of our own demise, and sometimes we hurt ourselves. And we are talking about, and I mean, without any reservations, although my DNA is national security, it's law enforcement, it's defense force, it's military. But sometimes within that arena that I've just explained, there is a lot of territorialism. There is a lot of issues regarding territory, and what appears to be smiling faces on joint press conferences. In fact, there's a lot of rivalry and dominion regarding primacy and control behind the scenes. And therefore, the NSOC, which was the launch pad for the NOC, was in an effort to reduce that. And a major concentration was the incorporation of our radars, our maritime resources, our intelligence agencies, and a joint effort. Commissioner Griffith, as the Minister of National Security, was very, very strong on advocating, because the NOC was assisting in actually constructing the concept based on his vision for the formation of a system known as the MIATF. That MIATF was a Maritime Interagency Task Force. So outside of the resources and the air and the assets, the Maritime Interagency Task Force, with primacy of the Coast Guard, because it was a maritime domain, would have been supported by immigration, by the army, by the police, by the intelligence gathering agencies, and by customs and excise. Very, very important. And also with civilian support systems. And that task force would have been the operational support to the maritime domain awareness. It was not going to remove any sort of operationalities from the Coast Guard or take away power from the police or reduce the role and function of the army. It was the formation of a task force whose focus was going to be on the maritime domain awareness, what you're calling the maritime wall. That never happened. It didn't go forward. Reason being, not so much lack of policies or a lot of the brain work together in the establishment and execution.
Gavin, let me interrupt you for a second. Go back to lack of policies. We lost you from there and start back there, please. I apologize for that.
If I'm losing you, your volume is rather low. I'm losing you right now.
I know, and we lost you too for a little while. You hearing me now? Are you hearing me at all now? Gavin, you hearing me?
I'm not hearing you.
Okay, I will talk until you hear me, because I'm sure it's a glitch in the internet broadcast. Are you hearing me now? Are you hearing me now at all? Sounds like an ad for a telephone. Satish,
do you want me to hang up?
No, not at all. Let Satish deal with this. Satish, could you guide and advise?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1.
We are hearing you. I don't know if you're hearing me now. And it's a shame that this is where we got that interruption, because he was giving a lot of good information. He will be back, and we will pick up right where he left off. And the reason for my silence, I know a lot of this stuff, and we've spoken to you about a lot of this stuff. Commander Hero is the frontline, he's the man to execute it, or he was the man to execute it. We've been talking about a national maritime security wall, a safety system that would have protected Trinidad and Tobago from the influx of Venezuelan refugees. They would have had to go through normal entrances to the country. It would immediately cease. The drug trafficking would end. Through Trinidad and Tobago, it would immediately cease. Human trafficking, contraband such as trafficking in arms and ammunition, all that would be gone. All that would be over. Trinidad and Tobago would be safe. We would have, the police would then, and would, using the assistance of the army, would be deployed on a massive gun interdiction exercise to pick up the 42,000 guns, the illegal guns that is believed to exist in Trinidad and Tobago. And those 42,000 guns, we would create motivation for law enforcement, pay them $1,000 per gun, $2,000 per gun, get all the guns brought in, get them broken down, get them melted down, destroy them, and Trinidad and Tobago would quickly become safe again, because people will have to come and hold you up with slingshot and knife. And I'm saying all of that because, and that's why we asked Commander Hero to join us tonight, because like in every other person that we bring on the show, you need to know that they are capable souls. Commander Hero, are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you. I'm a bit concerned what happened there, but no, I'm not too sure, but I'm hearing you now.
Okay, but
I'm not seeing your face, but I'm hearing you.
Okay, you were speaking about getting to the political will and the execution of something like a maritime security wall policy and stuff. So you want to take it back up from there?
Yeah, sure. As I was saying, there was also a very strong advocacy by our present commissioner when he was the Minister of National Security for the establishment of a MIATF, which was a Maritime Interagency Task Force, and this would have been the support operational arm for what we're talking about, which is more than just a maritime wall, which was the Maritime Domain Awareness project. And that would have involved the incorporation of the intelligence agencies, our coastal radar system, the Coast Guard, and the Maritime Interagency Task Force would have been various arms, including immigration, customs, the Army, the Coast Guard, which would have had primacy, and other support systems. And this would have been following in an international best practice, and it would have had nothing to do with command and control or roles and functions of any one of the agencies. It did not get off the ground. The concept of operations, what we know now as the CONOPS, is still there, and maybe it's something that should be revisited in an effort to ensure that we can have a robust approach to our maritime domain awareness, especially now with the oil and gas sector in our Gulf, eastern and southwestern coastline, and the mass migration as we're seeing and the threat coming out of the Venezuelan mainland. That is just part of it. Counter narcotics is also that, human trafficking, movement of contraband between the mainland and Venezuela. So there are a number of threat issues of why this was necessary, but it also falls directly in path with part of your BCM, which is your border control management plan as a country. That is something that needs to be addressed.
Why is it so woefully lacking in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, as I said, it was something that was being driven by the National Operations Center. That was the platform for national coordination.
No. Commander, I'm talking about
Yeah.
border control and security. Why is border
Yeah.
control and security so lacking in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, that is a question that will probably need to be answered presently by the National Security Platform, because it is very, very important that any homeland security, interior, or even a Ministry of Defense, depending how you want to look at it, one of their key priorities should be border security. And we must not be myopic to think that when we say border security, we are only talking about our maritime borders. When you say border security, it's also involving your airspace. It is also involving your legitimate ports of entry into your country, your illegitimate ports of entry, and most importantly, your international and foreign affairs relations with other countries, especially when it involves the entrance, repatriation, management, monitoring, surveillance of your various airports and seaports. So border control or border control management is a holistic plan that is a part of your national security policy and your national security strategy. I have not seen it. We haven't heard it. We've heard the buzzwords. We've heard people make a number of pronouncements. I honestly, and I stand to be corrected tonight, have not seen an implementation rollout of what we call a professional border control management plan in country, at least at this point.
Commander Hira, a writer for, I believe, it was either the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, spent some time on a platform out at sea, and he wrote an article that said more marine craft passed between the South American mainland and Trinidad and Tobago at night than were involved in the Normandy invasion. And he was saying, and he was over exaggerating to make a joke. And this is years ago. This happened under a previous administration. You were involved, you were on the front line, the formative line of the special anti-crime unit of Trinidad and Tobago when we deployed the Children 60-degree radar, and we were able to actually operationalize something like a maritime security line in the sea that would have ended the drug trade and the human trafficking and the 150,000 refugees that just boarded the country and all of the other 42,000 illegal guns the Prime Minister talks about. What I don't understand is, with all of these capable professionals in law enforcement in Trinidad and Tobago, why has political will been allowed to stymie the protection of this country?
Well, I think you actually presented the question and you kind of almost presented the answer. In that, what we need to see now, nothing is wrong with a political directive or a political involvement. If you understand strategizing at the National Security Council or strategizing at the apex of the triangle, it is important to get the strategy and have the political involvement and the directives and the costing and the resources. That is important. What must not happen is where there is a political say or involvement in the operationalizing and the how and the when. That shouldn't really happen. And therefore, what you just described is the fact that a lot of military in systems that could be more present in Trinidad and Tobago to support some of the political initiatives were removed from the armament or the armory locker of our present national security apparatus. For instance, we are talking about the coastal radar system, but if you are able to see someone in your yard going behind your fruit, you've at least worked on a large percentage of detection. You have detected and observed the perpetrator who breached your perimeter and is now in your land. If you do not have a capability to challenge this gentleman who is picking your fruit, but you can only see him, then what you're doing is creating a very nice statistical base that we have evidence of X amount of vessels being passed across the mainland, breaching or in our territorial waters, whether it's illegal fishing or whatever. The assets to intercept, be it surface or a major part that we no longer have, which was the air, plays a combined integrated role in supporting the intelligence and the surveillance. And therefore, we can be easily suffering at this point because we do not have the operational assets to execute proper support to ensure that interception or detection and interception is fully maximized. That is not a question that I can answer. That is probably a question maybe a politician can answer because maybe it is not part of their present strategy. But it really was as if part of my inner being was ripped away when I heard about the grounding of the helicopters or even reduced or limited flying and maritime surveillance with our aircraft. I'm hoping that we can see that revisited and we could probably see a renewal of that entire strategy because we are limping, we are on one foot. It is very, very important that part of the apparatus, what we are just discussing, and although our main focus here is maritime, it is very, very important to have air support to any of those operations because, as I had said in another platform, when we conceptualized the operationalities of the NOC, it was not only for patrolling your territorial waters, it was not only for counter-narcotics, it was not only for medivacs, it was also for disaster preparedness management and supporting some of the issues that you'd have in country. It was for law enforcement. It was air law enforcement. And that is what played a very important role of deterrence. I mean, those helicopters overhead with the night sun or at carjackings, doing chases on robberies or controlling traffic, passing information, moving some of the units back and forth over country. That is the type of momentum that brought to the citizenry visually, because we are a country that is visually stimulated, that brought to your country visually that there was a semblance of security and safety.
So you're saying that you need asset management to end the criminality, but without assets to manage, we're just looking at it.
I'm saying as a combination to the present escalated law enforcement approach by the police service, combined with also the support of the defense force, man on the ground, is good. But we have to understand that we are at a place now in country that we have to move from good to better. We have to move from better to best. And therefore, asset acquisition and management applied to our theater of operations with proper due diligence and research that is necessary is almost paramount now to complete this holistic approach of a national security strategy. And I'm saying that we're still out on one limb on that. We are still to see that materialize.
Drug interdiction out at sea. We've had this as a continuous problem. Trinidad is corrupted to the core because of dirty drug money, drug trafficking. Trinidad is a narco pipeline. We've seen 400 million to Norfolk, Virginia, 300 million to Canada, almost a billion to Spain, 150 million when Vietnam. We've 600 million on Monas. I mean, we've had all of these billions of dollars of illegal drugs reach into and move from Trinidad and Tobago. As a former commander of the Coast Guard, do you not take it personally that these things happen in a country so small and it makes it appear as if the Coast Guard is incapable?
It can be seen honestly as though there are some incapabilities of the Coast Guard. At some instances, people have gone the level of saying sometimes that the Coast Guard may be compromised. But we have to understand that there will be interdictions and there will be seizures. But that is just a chip at the trunk of a very sturdy tree. The main issue here, and you were correct to say things like because of the whole narco operations and all that, I wouldn't take the liberty to identify Trinidad and Tobago as a narco state. You have the freedom to do that, Philip, and with all due respect. But what I do know is that we are fighting against an enemy known as transnational organized crime. And with transnational organized crime, narco trafficking, human trafficking, terrorist financing, white collar crime are all facets of a major platform. And the same way that national security would sit on a table and will strategize and they'll have the heads of these various sections making decisions so as to maintain law and order or curb security issues in country. You have heads of transnational organized crime entities sitting with shirt and tie in air-conditioned building, top floors, making decisions regarding movement of money and making money under legitimate business enterprises, import, export, container trade, the wharf, the port, shipping agencies, airline trade, and back and forth and in and out of Miami and various other countries. So that is, I'm saying all of this to say that, yes, there will be very good operations as you took the detail to dramatize the other day when you were talking about the Coast Guard out there on the North Coast and stuff. But we need to see an effort by our intelligence and our law enforcement agencies directing at transnational organized crime and directing at the issues of the internationalism that links the transnational organized crime. Trinidad may be a small country in the Southern Caribbean, but there are a lot of big players in here that are internationally linked. We have not seen that sort of muscle. We have not seen that sort of directive. We have not seen that sort of boldness yet with some of the interdictions, the detections, the arrests that is necessary. People have talked many times before about the big fish and all of that. This is not about really the big fish. It's going at the systems. It's going at the systems. And that takes me back to my other point where it is about time now, and I'm hoping to see it in the future while we have time on screen, not tonight I'm talking about, but metaphorically, to see a political decision that dictates a directive that is going to go at transnational organized crime in country. That will be the beginning of how we begin crumpling at the towers or the walls that have been built around us.
When you say that, you give me two questions to ask. I want to ask both questions. I'll ask them one at a time. The first question I want to ask you, the second one has to do with banking and the movement of money and how that works together with what you do. But the first thing I want to ask, with all that you've just said, how did you feel when you heard that 50%, almost 50% of container traffic to Trinidad and Tobago comes off the port unchecked?
Just to know that there's a blind spot inside of it that needs being addressed. And if you can say it based on your informants or your confidential sources, it means that for some reason or other, it should be within the corridors of national security. And I'm hoping that it is attracting the attention of the right agencies, more so the decision making to direct investigations and information gathering to that aspect, to that whole issue regarding the port and the containers, because it has continued to be a thorn in the side of national security over the years.
The numbers I use, almost 50% containers that came from the Prime Minister. The 42,000 illegal guns was Independent Senator Paul Richards, following on the Prime Minister's 37,000 illegal guns that he spoke about in 2017. 57 women were trafficked from this country. A former Minister of National Security under this administration admitted that to the Parliament. So I'm using their numbers to ask questions. If you know all of this is going on, so I'm saying to you, as somebody who could have the role and the responsibility to plug the holes that allows all the criminality that takes place in this country to prosper. You touched on white collar crime. You cannot end the criminality that drives this international organized crime that is behind this. You can't touch it unless you touch the money. Unless the banking sector, central bank, the Ministry of Finance, the Financial Intelligence Unit, until our Integrity Commission had real teeth to prevent public officials, because people think the Integrity Commission is just for MPs and ministers. Once you're a public officer, you fall under the Integrity Commission Act. And until that, Integrity in Public Life Act, and until that organization had the teeth to search and seize and arrest and prosecute, we pay lip service to wanting to fight crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and then, because I had to tell Gary Griffith, I said, your police officers are being given stupid law to enforce that making them look good and bad at the same time. You, in your role, and the Coast Guard, just now you said that people say that the Coast Guard compromised. Left with no information, left with what looks like a tsunami of drugs and dirty money in this country. And I mean, I want to quote a former minister when he says, anybody who passed common entrance could look around and see there are businesses in this country that cannot justify their size and their wealth based on what they've done and the speed with which they've grown. And we have no prosecutions, we have no active investigations, we do not have a director of public prosecutions updating the public, nothing. I asked former Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams, I was invited to a symposium on drug trafficking and crime at the Chamber of Commerce, and I asked former Commissioner Stephen Williams, are the operative arms of Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that are responsible for fraud and drug trafficking, are they properly set up and funded? And he said, in a word, no. How do we move from not funding the arms of the police service that have to go after the sophisticated top of building white collar criminals and have 50% of our container traffic passing straight out of the port without search, without examination? How can we say that we want to fight this type of crime and then this be our reality?
Right now, there needs to be a proper strategy and a plan to do just what you've just said. I don't think that we have given it the attention that it is needed. And even if there is a no holds barred, no stones left unturned sort of approach by, let's say, the commissioner and his team, he still has to be so concerned, and he is sleeplessly concerned regarding the prosecutorial process, regarding the justice system. And you heard Attorney at Law Vernon Dillon go to tongue on that yesterday. Because you may very well be conducting very good information gathering and directing at certain targets, be it here or internationally, but you do not have the muscle of the justice system or the prosecutorial process, which could be designed in such a way to delay and to sabotage and to stress the process. We could be making circles. So therefore, it is needed now in this whole aspect of transformation and doing things better for Trinidad and Tobago. And maybe the whole COVID break is an opportunity to go back to the drawing boards and to redesign, as a vertical solutions architect, redesign an approach to have a non-interfered with sort of directive, pull back on the politics and allow subject matter experts or a team or an agency, the same way that a G22 was formed. We can form a specific system and a team resourced and financed to go a transnational organization if we are serious about it. I don't know if we are serious about it because we have not yet seen us at that level. There are people in country that can be pulled out of where they are, and there can be a formation of a system that, given the right resources, given the right finances, given the right, what I'll call, support, can go at this with an expectation of results and not phone calls in the middle of the night to say disregard or deviate, which happens at times. So I'm saying let us use the opportunity now to get back and redirect this strategy and maybe put the politics aside and allow professionalism to reign. That is a way forward. I can't sit here tonight and give plans or give policies or give part of that. I've done that throughout my career, at least this latter half of my career, and some are listened to, some are not. So it's not really an opportunity to go providing solutions at this point, but I remain very positioned to serve.
Disregard and deviate. That felt like two shots from a shotgun. Commander Hero, we've been talking before either of us have had gray in our beards. And I just realized that looking at you while you're speaking there, disregard and deviate. Dig a little deeper in that.
Disregard and deviate could very well mean that, you know what, that you're working together as a system and you are moving in on a specific target, and information comes forward that, you know what, this target most likely is going to be one of our takedowns, and information can come not only from Trinidad and Tobago, from elsewhere, and they say disregard, stand down. We have it under control. Leave it up to us. That type of stuff, or go to target Bravo, target B. That happens. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because of the type of information that you have to deal with sometimes as an operations commander. The type of information you have to deal with sometimes when you're facing certain type of results or you're interfering with people's stuff and people's pocket. In a system that I just designed by voice, there should be no room for that. Once you have applied the full throttle and said you're going into this operation, then we are going to the long haul. We're going to the end state. We're not going halfway. Many things get started in this country, good operations, good intelligence, and it ends up halfway. We are at a point in country, if we are serious about bringing an end, bringing a result, reducing some of the issues with the crime and all that type of stuff, that we have to give leverage to the systems that are placed in country to do that. Because operations are not going to get involved in the political aspect of how to run the system, and therefore the political aspect has no right to get involved in how the operational system is going to run their theater. Basically, there's a role and there are boundaries. There's certain sort of what I'll call sharing of information and integration of information sharing coming from the top, coming down, but it should not be that it is directed by the top. You have the politicians will have to pull back and allow operations to do what they have to do, and know that we are doing this because we have trusted the system and we are ready to support, especially in the concept that I just said, support the prosecutorial results that is expected in operations like this. And I'm saying this tonight because there is still hope. There is still a lot of canvas to be painted where we can fix the thing, but we have to get serious about it. And we are not seeing that yet, but hopefully, lessons learned. We've taken up some hits. The government, they're trying their best here and there, whatever, but there comes a time when it is not so much about politics. It has to be about nationalism. It has to be about country, and put politics aside. And I say this for all of the political systems. Put the politics aside and allow your experts to do what they have to do.
I think what I mean is it can't be about party. It's all politics. Everything we're talking, all these shows, every single thing you've said tonight. We can't have a situation where Gavin Hira is given all his lead, he can run, he's given all the funding, create the National Operations Center, give us the Maritime Security Wall, interdict, give us all of the drug traffickers, and then they reach on the ground and we can't prosecute them because the justice system failing, or that we can't get the right information from the financial sector. There are too many loopholes in the laws. We've created an environment where this type of criminality prospers. We've now gone the other direction, where if you speak about it, if you hint about it, if you suggest that people might be involved in certain actions because it is glaring, they're talking using defamation statutes to shut you up from speaking. You said politely tonight a lot of the things that I say with anger. I don't understand why you, who has had your feet literally wet, why you not angry? I have spoken to pilots who told me they are talking. He said, Philip, I am talking to national security operatives. We are making holes in the sky, looking at drug trafficking taking place below us. And they're telling us, we have it, don't worry, and no assets nowhere close by.
Maybe my experience in the arena has taught me a lot, especially with the aspect of anger. And I'm not saying this negatively. I think I would prefer to say disappointed. But I am not a pessimist. So I'm seeing the glass half full and not half empty, in that I'm trusting that somebody's going to wake up somewhere quickly and recognize, you know what, we can afford to fix this thing if we approach it in the right way. And I think sometimes even some of our leaders, our heads of security, people who are in charge of systems, need to begin to start speaking out a little more and make certain demands on government as to what is expected when they operationalize certain aspects of their platforms, be it the defense force, the prison services, fire services to a great extent, and of course the police service. So in that way, you don't go to a meeting to hear, you go to a meeting to share. And sometimes, as I know it in the old days, we'd go to a meeting and we'd stand up and tell the minister, that can't work. And the minister would want to fight with you or whatever, and then he recognizes, wait a minute, I am out of my league here, and they're telling me it can't work, then come up with a solution how it can. But I think I'm seeing, like tonight, I could be wrong. We are going to meetings to hear. We're not going to meetings to share, to speak out, and to add, and to bring a certain type of solution-based incentives to how this thing could work. Because you're correct. I had my feet wet. Many of us have our feet wet. We understand the theater. We understand how this thing breeds. This issue of crime and criminality and security. We understand that. And we are from a fraternity that are die-hard. We damaged. We grew up following the blue lights, and we want to see a rectification. We want to see a semblance of safety and security brought back to country. And politicians need to give space to the operationalism. We need to give space to the experts. They need to give space to go out there and take the hill. All right, yes, we understand the limelight and the mileage and whatever be with the press conferences afterwards. But I'm hoping to a great extent that there is a separation between operationalizing and politicizing. And I'm yet still to confirm that.
40 years ago, there was a Scott drug report that painted a picture when Trinidad was still in its infancy. 40 years later, we're talking about a government that grounded the air arm of national security. How is this not politics to you? How are you not looking for a political solution? How?
No, not so much a political solution, but a political reason of why. It has to do with advisory. If it is that whoever would have given the executive to ground the aircraft or to ground the system of air support or air law enforcement, it will be based on who's advising. And maybe the advisors at that time said, this is not a good investment. This is not a good operational.
We could find money to make roundabouts and overpasses and highways to nowhere. $500 million investment would have saved us the $9 billion we spend every year in national security trying to mop up the consequences of failing to secure our nation's borders. You think that they don't know? Are you telling me that you believe that this is 40 years of political incompetence or not something far more onerous?
Yeah, well, the heat is on, for want of a better term. The heat is on. And as I have said before in a number of other interviews, we are also in the information revolution. and people will get information if they're not given information. People will conduct in-depth researches. People, very bright people in country, will do geopolitical analyses and connect with international systems. And if, for instance, you draw a pattern, you draw a sequence, a lifeline as to what you were saying before, as to where we are today, it could seem that there will be or is involved a number of other contributories to the present state that we are experiencing. And that is why I'm saying any serious system, administration, dealing and fixing the issue would try to put some of the ills of the history behind us and work towards a new vision, implementing new best practices, implementing and taking risks, for instance, thinking out of the box and doing new things. And one of them was what we had in country before, the platform of the National Operations Center that provided national coordination and interagency framework collaboratively with all ministries, and the support of air law enforcement. That played an important role. However, the new administration believed we did not need air support, we do not need a national coordination platform. Surprisingly, however, the name has been changed to a National Fusion Center, but the roles and functions have diminished, and we don't see that sort of national coordination and theater of meeting and where you can have that sort of information sharing and utilization of all of the assets. So there's an economy of effort when you conduct an operation, be it a bus that overturns on the Uriah Butler, to a bushfire somewhere in the Maraval Hills, or something as serious and as severe as the COVID-19 crisis. Somewhere along the line, somebody needs to say, wait a minute, I don't think we were correct in stopping this thing. Let us revisit it, renew it, and ensure that it can support it. The architecture is there, the systems is there, the redundancy plan is there, the national coordination aspect is there. Maybe some of the brain power isn't anymore, but that is something that can be found by the stretch of a hand. So in country, we need a seriousness by our decision makers to come back to a point to say, you know what? There are things that are needed in this country that we need to go back and revisit. Even if you're changing the name, don't change the concept. And that is some of the issues. It's almost like the theory of the West Indies team. We move people around, still expect to win matches.
Shuffling jokers in our pack. Commander Hero, you've skirted a couple times saying that the decisions to fix it has to come from on top, and that at some point we have to look at the fact that the country is itself so corrupted that you need to get a fresh start. I want to ask you a straight up question. Are there other technocrats in the field of your capacity capable of functioning at the level you function if a political party was to pluck you and appoint you Minister of National Security?
Definitely, there are a lot of people out there who have retreated to the hills and but are still very in contact, who have left our shores but are still very in tune, who are sitting in the stadium close enough to see when the players are making errors, and are very committed and what I would say very, very emotional tonight for the state of country. There will be times when we will celebrate victoriously, when the low-hanging fruit is picked, but there are times when we would sit and we would hurt because we know that a lot more could have been done. And I just want to say something, Philip. In the very embryonic stage of the COVID-19 issue, very, very early, I was in Germany in another portfolio, and I saw the thing happening based on my team that was conducting some research for me. And I said, this thing, come in Trinidad. People thought at that point, nah, that ain't reaching the Caribbean or whatever. There's issues of flu, or wearing a mask in Wuhan, China, whatever. But I picked it up, my senses picked it up, just as we picked up the Ebola issue. And when I came back here, I had an interview on 102, and I said it is important at this point that we establish a task force that was done through the National Operations Center for the Ebola crisis. A task force would have given that sort of extension to treat with all national assets and ministries and issues that would have been expected, because the task force, the documentation and the written concept for the Ebola crisis task force, which was run by Brigadier General Philip Spencer out of the National Operations Center under our coordination, had the ability to maximize and utilize coordination throughout country, and there was contingency planning, and questions were the what if questions were being asked. So ahead of something happening, there would have been a contingency to address it and not have to confiscate double from a gas station as low as that. So I'm saying, and people didn't listen, they didn't understand the issuance or establishment of a task force, and went ahead and did what they had to do. And all it takes sometimes is to know that we don't have to go far. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Right on the shelves there are working plans and people that can be added to support many of the initiatives that we would like to see introduced in country. We have a crisis, you bring in a crisis management team. You have an issue, you bring in a team that is strategic, that can deal with it. There are capabilities, to answer your question specific, that are willing in the morning to jump in and bring this thing to some order.
Commander Hero, if all of these decades with all of this ability have passed, parties come, parties go, and nothing changes. If you are watching our country fail and lose because of a lack of political will, why don't you see the solution is a fresh political solution? Why don't you see that?
I'm going to answer that question as an organizational transformation expert that I lecture in the MBA program. Everyone can see that there's a need for transformation. And in transformation, what you need is a transformation oversight team or committee that can introduce that. You have to understand three things that I'll share in closing: the diagnostics, the intervention, and the implementation. You have spoken regarding that transformation and the establishment of a new political system, a new color t-shirt, whatever, new flag flying, I don't know. I am saying, if we are serious about...
I can't let you reduce it to a new color t-shirt and a new flag flying, because all the Progressive Empowerment Party does is bring information and education. This is my 8 o'clock every night. I have to run down the best and the brightest and twist their arm and bend them and tell them, come and add your voice to this conversation so Trinidad hears. No other political movement, no media house is bringing the level of information, giving you the platform.
My apologies for if you believe it was reduced. My apologies. But what I'm saying is that you're stating it in that aspect based on your vocals of what you have. And I'm saying the same thing in the concept of transformation, understanding the diagnostics and the interventions that we get the implementation. We have to understand that it's about transformation. And transformation is bringing a new approach, bringing a new sight, a new vision, bringing new attributes to the table. That is what we are saying. We're saying it is time that we get a new system, a new team that can be very, very implementary in the transformation. And with that, national security is just one arm of it. It has to be people who are thinking at a level of transformation, willing to take the risks, and willing also to bring a new breed, a new rhythm. In the military, it's called the battle rhythm. What is your battle rhythm? And therefore, a new battle rhythm to the arena of transformation.
Would you say that we've been reactive for too long and it's time to be proactive and to take the bull by the horns and to get this country fixed? We need to reinvent itself, undo and redo all of the things, put capacities to work, the things that you've been talking about tonight. In 1 hour, you demonstrated an understanding of the national security theater in this country and how to end the criminality that is plaguing Trinidad and Tobago. Would you say that now is the time that we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, put aside all the divisions and come together as one people under one flag, country first, for a better Trinidad and Tobago? Would you say that?
Definitely. Definitely, but I don't think we've lost faith. Being reactive for too long doesn't mean that you cannot become proactive. Being reactive from too long, I think, should really open your eyes to the fact that we have a long list of lessons learned. It is time that we shift and we change our attitude of being more proactive. And proactive is not only a method of thinking, it is a lifestyle and a cultural shift. Are we ready for that new cultural shift of being proactive for the betterment of Trinidad and Tobago? Has to be the leading question.
Commander Gavin Hira, it's always a pleasure having a conversation with you. I learn every single time. I want to thank you for joining us and for taking the time to come and enlighten and educate all of us in Trinidad and Tobago. Education is what is going to empower us to make better decisions. I believe that you have the knowledge that when you speak from a position of understanding it at a level that most people don't. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. And if there are any other things you'd like to add in your closing comments, take as much time as you need.
Yeah, this time I just want to take the opportunity to say a shout out to our frontline people out there who continue to put their life on the line to ensure we have a safe Trinidad and Tobago. And not so much only the healthcare workers, but the garbage collectors, the essentials, people who are making sure that we maintain some semblance of sanity in Trinidad and Tobago. Shout outs to you guys. And I will close by a military statement that I live by, which has caused me to be always in readiness and relevance. That is, those who sweat in peace won't bleed in war.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Commander. Trinidad and Tobago, this is where we are right now. These are the lessons that we need to learn. We need to understand that the wrong that is wrong with Trinidad and Tobago can be repaired. We need to put it right, but we need to put it right with political will. Listening to all of these people that come on this show, what they tell you from a position of knowing and understanding is that it can be fixed. Right after this show, Satish is going to run a 3-minute video for you about securing the nation. You should stick around to watch that. I don't know if he's going to do the closing animation before he plays the video or before, I don't know. But stick around to look at that. Tomorrow we have former Independent Senator Dr. Krian Singh. He's a vet, he's an animal rights activist, he's an outspoken citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And you're going to want to hear what he has to say tomorrow. On Thursday, we have a former PNM minister and MP, and I'm watching all the people trying to guess who it is. And I find it so strange that everybody's only thinking that it could be a man. A lot of good, strong former PNM MPs, ministers who were women as well. So careful, you're just going on the wrong gender. I'm not saying that it's a woman, I'm just saying that the guess game, I find it amusing that everybody's trying to figure out who it is. But that show on Thursday night, you're going to be informed. On Friday, we have Dano Suko again, and we're talking about making Trinidad and Tobago food self-sufficient. Fire the entire committee of 22 or 23. Put the farmers to work. Do like Gavin Hero says, pay attention to the people who keep us going forward and having something like a semblance of civilization. And like him, I have been thanking all of those people before. I think that the people who we've ignored that we need to also send a shout out to is all the people who do the manicures, the pedicures, the facials, and the haircuts, because we're starting to look real ugly. And we can't wait to be able to come back by y'all and spend some money and pretty back up ourselves. Trinidad and Tobago is the most beautiful paradise on planet Earth. Tobago is the best tropical destination in the world. Trinidad could be the richest country on planet Earth if we wanted it. And it has been me talking to you for years. And now with Plain Talk, and now because of COVID-19, we can bring people really experienced and trained professionals to tell you what can be done, what should be done, how we can reinvent Trinidad and Tobago to a better Trinidad and Tobago for all of us. And if you want that, if you want a better country for you and yours, then you are going to have to decide to put aside all of the dividers, all of the blinkers, all of the blinders. Stand together as one people under one flag. Vote for country over party, and we'll be able to get ourselves where we need to be. Until tomorrow, stay safe, Trinidad and Tobago. Good day, Trinidad and Tobago. Once again, the issue of our porous borders are not making the amount of news that they should, despite the fact that they are causing a lot of the problems that are plaguing this nation. The Commissioner of Police had to belabor the fact again that many of the victims of human trafficking being used to run the prostitution rings in this country now are themselves being trafficked into this country or entering Trinidad illegally on any of our unmanned coastlines. It has been this way for all of our independent history. And the advent of the drug trade in its infancy in the early 80s prompted the then government to commission what we now know as the Scott Drug Report, that resulted in findings so damning to high members of society that we were unable to lay it in the parliament. Out of fear, I believe, for the destructive aspects of some of the names called. So what did we do? We swept our drug trade under the rug. We commissioned an inquiry with Justice Scott and then swept it under the rug. Between then and now, the 35 years that have passed, Trinidad has become a full-blown narco state. Besides which, we have entered into the world of human trafficking on a grand scale. How grand? In 2017, the then Minister of National Security, Edmund Dillon, admitted to the Parliament that 57 of this nation's women have been trafficked. He never said how he came to know that. He never said where they were trafficked to, what evidence there was, what their names were, and the media didn't follow up anything on it. But 57 mothers, daughters, sisters, friends were kidnapped and trafficked out of this country, and we've done nothing about it, and we've done nothing to prevent it happening since. That was 2017. Many women have gone missing since, and we are nowhere the wiser as to how many, the actual number that have been trafficked out of Trinidad and Tobago is. What we do know is that there is a massive influx of predominantly Venezuelan national women being brought into this country for sexual slavery. And that is unacceptable. And this country is a signature to many of the United Nations edicts. And yet, when it comes to issues like the rights of children, the rights of women, we fall down so badly. But about the drug report, why haven't we ever, in all the time since, never recommissioned a commission of inquiry? If to do nothing else but to chart the course as to where we might be in the notorious narco world. We've shipped hundreds of millions of dollars of cocaine to Spain, Vietnam, the Philippines, Norfolk, Virginia, Canada, the United States of America. We found $600 million worth of cocaine on Monas Island. And all of these massive shipments of cocaine, besides becoming fodder for the rats that have an addiction to eating cocaine in this country, no one has ever been held responsible, with the exception of some very small fish, that if you sold them all for weight, you couldn't get $1 million, much less 600 million. So why has no government since the 80s taken responsibility for the well-being of this country and its citizens by at least finding out who exactly are involved in this massive drug trade, using Trinidad and Tobago as a narco pipeline to ship billions of dollars worth of cocaine and other contraband throughout the world? A drug enforcement agent based on an oil platform outside of Trinidad and Tobago said in the 90s, in jest, that more marine craft passed between the South American mainland and Trinidad and Tobago at night than were involved in the Normandy invasion. Obviously a joke to make a point. Why have none of our prime ministers, Patrick Manning, Basdio Pandey, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, and now Keith Rowley, done anything of substance to close the borders of this country, secure this nation, and end the drug trade? At the same time, in 2017, the current Prime Minister, Keith Rowley, told the nation that he was aware that there were 37,000 illegal guns in Trinidad and Tobago. He never told us how he comes to know such a perfect figure? It seems random that you would know, like there was a stock check. And if there was an ability to check the stock, who checked it? But forget all of that. If you knew that there were 37,000 illegal guns in the country and you were the prime minister and you knew that they were the source of a lot of the violence and murder, wouldn't you have done something to stop the inflow of illegal guns, the AR-15s, the AK-47s, the Galils, and all the other high-powered arsenal that the underworld seems proud to display? Wouldn't you have done something? Why didn't the media press the Prime Minister between 2017 and now to account for how he knows and to account for what is being done to stop the inflow and remove the guns already here? We in the Progressive Empowerment Party, we are strong advocates for something called the Maritime Security Wall. And the Maritime Security Wall is the repurposing of oil barges, oil rigs that we have no use for, that are parked up down the islands paying a rent that nobody will ever need again. And it is the repurpose of them, the removal of the oil apparatus and the redevelopment of the surface to house Coast Guard, Customs, Immigration, Police, and anti-narcotics agents. 6 of them, 8 of them, positioned 3 miles out at sea in a ring, a line in the water we call the virtual wall, connected by the 360-degree radar and by sonar buoys, so that any marine craft attempting to enter Trinidad and Tobago's waters could be stopped and examined for contraband like illegal guns, human cargo, cocaine, marijuana, and any of the other contraband and illegal substances that currently walk their way up any beach into any vehicle into Trinidad and Tobago. 37,000 illegal guns should have been given a bounty by the government so that the police could pick them up for a reward. There is nothing like incentive to get people to work above and beyond the call of duty, and setting aside $60 or $70 million to effect that, once the borders are closed, would be a perfect use of money that are otherwise being dispensed for vanity and other wasteful projects. The $500 million that we spent renovating a red house that nobody needs could have built the Maritime Security Wall in half the time it took to renovate and restore the red house and secure this nation against the inflow of dirty money that has corrupted this country and ruined this economy. It would have prevented the importation of illegal guns and drugs that again are fueling the gang and violence culture, making blood flow like water in the streets of this country. The government has done nothing. We've bought boats. Every time the PNM is in office, we buy more boats. Is it because that somebody in the PNM is an agent of these companies, and when a sale is made, there's a commission to share among the boys? And when these boats come, why do we just park them up in Chagaramas and complain that there's no money for diesel and there's no money for corned beef and there's nobody trained? Why are we making a mockery of government and national security? And why are we, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, accepting it? Equipped with fast attack helicopters and interceptor boats, the Maritime Security Wall would create an opportunity to stop all marine craft 3 miles out at sea so that law enforcement could examine their contents. There is another angle to stopping the inflow of contraband, and that is to unstuff all the containers on the port. The Progressive Empowerment Party advocates for the relocation of the Port of Spain to a facility 10 times its size in Point Lisas, so we can provide sheds supervised by cameras to unstuff all containers destined for Trinidad, so that none of the contraband could find its way to our shores. It is time, it is way past time that we stop accepting mismanagement and incompetence as government. We need answers from those in office, or we need to fire them and replace them with people who are capable of doing the job. The Maritime Security Wall will end drug trafficking, Importation of dirty drug dollars will end the influx of illegal weapons, arms, and ammunition, and will stop human trafficking into and out of Trinidad and Tobago coal. So why hasn't it yet been done? Cannot be money. We find money for the stupidest of things. So why does the Prime Minister, the government, the leader of the opposition, and all of the parliament stand so silent on what is quite possibly the most pressing issue facing this country today, our porous and unsecured borders, making this a virtual criminal's paradise and allowing for all manner of criminality to take place? The Progressive Empowerment Party calls on the citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago to write, phone, use text and WhatsApp everybody in public office, from the Prime Minister down. Ask the Attorney General, the Minister of National Security, why haven't we yet taken any steps to secure this nation's borders? Something as simple as unmanned drones positioned on the four corners of Trinidad and the two extreme ends of Tobago could do something like a job, but we do nothing. We've grounded our helicopters. We have no eye in the sky. We have no response. Our theater of operations is in the south, but our boats are based in the north, tied up permanently. What are we to assume as a people in a country that 40 years ago did an inquiry into the drug trafficking in this country and found results so damning we couldn't even lay it in our parliament? What is to be said of us that we've done nothing since and continue to lament the fallout of not having a proper run country where the borders are secure and all marine craft landing is done at designated sites where customs, immigration, and law enforcement can properly police and protect this nation? We are not going to get a better country making excuses for the failures of the past. We are not going to get a better country voting race and voting tribe. The only way to fix Trinidad and Tobago is to confront the problems that plague Trinidad and Tobago and vote effectively for people who demonstrate an understanding of the problem and a way forward and a solution. The Progressive Empowerment Party calls on all of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to take their responsibility for this democracy a lot more seriously and stand with us as we call for a safe and a secure Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.